how do I want to say this? So like once you understand coding, you can use those tools, and it ends up doing a lot of the coding for them, and as a result, they're not generating the most efficient code that they could. So, all right, we're going to start getting more specific about what you need to do for the first part of the project. We've sort of talked about web design in general. We've talked about identifying the goals, identifying who your audience is. We're now going to go into like, well, what do you need to turn in? All right, which is probably what people are going to be very interested in. So I'm going to bring up that in Canvas, the document that specifies what you need to turn in, and we'll talk about it and try to give some examples to try to clarify it. Also remember, by the way, that, and we'll spend a little bit of time, whoops, wrong thing. We'll spend a little bit of time talking about this too when we're done talking about the project, the portfolio. That's actually pretty straightforward. If you've been doing the assignments all along, it's not really that big of a deal. But at any rate, let's look at the project. Project overview. We'll just spend a minute hitting the highlights on this one. Just to hit a few highlights, keep in mind this is going to be it's intended to be a small website. It doesn't need to be gigantic. Feel free to think beyond the scope of this class. So for example, if we haven't talked about embedding audio or embedding video on the page, and you want to do that, talk to me, and we'll figure out how you can do that effectively. There may be an opportunity to develop a site for a nonprofit organization as part of a service learning project. That doesn't seem to be happening this semester. This happens some semesters. If you have something you want to suggest on your own, for example, if you belong to a club or organization or something that needs a website developed, by all means, you can do that as your project. Your final project should contain 6 to 8 pages, each containing a reasonable amount of content. You know, this is one of those things where I feel sometimes like I have to, have my lawyers double check this. So I say reasonable amount of content so you just don't have 6 to 8 pages with just like a word or two on each. All right. That's an approximate guideline. The thing is I want you to demonstrate your skills as a web developer. 6 to 8 pages I think would do it because navigation and organization is important. So I can't tell all those skills just by looking at one page. On the other hand, I don't need 100 pages to tell those skills. If you're doing 100 pages, more power to you, but you don't need to, all right? And that's what I'm trying to tell you here. I know everyone has other responsibilities, everyone has other classes, so it's not meant to be that mammoth of a task. So I think 6 to 8 pages is sufficient to develop a small website that talks about some, I'll use the word problem or situation or topic, maybe, in sufficient detail for this course. We're going to talk about the specific methodology in a minute here. There'll be 2 deliverables, 2 things that you turn in, a design document, prototype, and then the final deliverable, which is just turning in the project, turning in all the web pages and associated files. Should be technically sound, well designed, and effectively communicate the intended message. All right. I don't think anything too earth-shattering there. Let's look at the first deliverable and that will be the design. The design consists of 5 parts. And one book that I read had the 5 parts all defined with words starting with S. That's a good way to remember them, all right? Although certain parts have like other names too. But a Word document or some sort of document will contain the first 4 parts, all right? The last part, the prototype, is going to be actual HTML, CSS, images, will be the actual files that constitute a website. The first step is a strategy step. From our discussion last time, we identified really to design a good website, you need a couple of things. First of all, you need to understand the goals from the website, of the website. And then you need to define who the prospective audience is and what their goals are. All right? So for the strategy section, I want a description of the site's topic purpose. So that's a short paragraph. So this is a paragraph that describes the purpose of the site. The more specific you can be, the better off you're probably going to be. For example, if I talked about, if I turned in a plan that said, I'm going to do a website about music, well, wow, that's a gigantic topic, right? That's not very specific. That doesn't help me understand, what you're going to go after. And it's going to be hard to do, especially in 6 to 8 pages, all right? So you want to narrow it down. So maybe you're going to do a website about pianos. Okay, that's better, right? But you want to narrow it down even further because, again, even pianos is sort of a big topic for 6 to 8 pages. So maybe you're going to do a site about piano music, all right? Maybe the piano in popular music, the piano in jazz, the piano in classical music. Now you're starting to get to a well-defined topic, something that you can handle in without creating a gigantic site. All right? So you want to narrow it down. Almost any topic you pick, you can either narrow down or broaden, all right, to fit the necessary size of the site. Sometimes people take, usually people, the bigger danger is that people think of a really broad topic and they have to narrow it down a little bit. Occasionally, you can pick too narrow of a topic. The football triumphs of Johnny Manziel in the NFL. That's a pretty narrow topic, right? You're not going to have too much information on a site like that, all right? So you might need to broaden it, to, I don't know, the football successes of first-round draft picks for the Cleveland Browns. Well, that's still a pretty narrow topic, all right? So I don't know. So you would broaden it sort of to make it a proper size. Now, when you identify these goals, some things that people state as goals, I don't really count as goals in this context. For example, the site should be user-friendly. Well, of course your site should be user-friendly. You don't really need to say that. The site should be a good website. Well, no, you don't need to say that. Of course your site should be a good website, all right? Or the site should have clear navigation. Yeah, just about any site you can think of should have clear navigation. So you don't really need to say things that are just sort of restating the basic web design principles. Your goal should relate to the content and the topic of your site. All right. So once you define your site's purpose, come up with 3 user personas. And what are user personas? They are fake people that you use to represent the kinds of people that are going to be visiting your site. All right? We talked a little about this last time. I don't think we called them personas, but we said that any website, there's a variety of different people that are going to be visiting it. You know, we gave the example of a college. There could be people that are currently enrolled at the college. That's one group of people that are going to be visiting the site. High school students, that's the second group that could be visiting the site. Parents of high school students, that's a third example of people that could be visiting the site, and so on. So for large sites, there's going to be many personas that are going to be possibly visiting the site. For yours, I want you to think of 3. And that may seem hard at first, but it really isn't. All right? It really isn't. For example, getting back to our website about piano music, you may have you may have as one of your personas someone who's very familiar with the piano, someone that plays the piano. You might have as a second persona someone that doesn't play but is interested in music. And a third persona might be a teacher that's looking for resources to share with their class. So there's 3 personas of people that might use your website. All right? Now, we really go all out on this. All right? We really get extra with this. All right? What we do is we actually make up people, we give them names, and we even get pictures for them. All right? So if you Google, for example, personas web design, you get a whole bunch of descriptions of what they should be like. Talks about what a persona is, what do personas look like. And here's an example. You make up a little story about them. All right? So you give them a name. This is Tom Brody. And I was going to say, isn't he quarterback for the Patriots? But that's Tom Brady. All right? But they make up a little story about them. Tom has 8 years experience in lube shop operation. He's married with 2 kids. Blah, 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 blah. And there is a list of goals. All right? Presumably, maybe this is a site for an auto parts store. This guy looks like he's a mechanic. But Tom's goals. He wants to keep the cars coming into his shop, reduce labor percentages, meet or exceed last year's numbers. And they even put a little quote that that describes his life and describes that. What I would say that you should do, you don't really need the quote. You don't really need the long story about the person, maybe just a short blurb. A picture is good. Making up a name is good. It sounds corny, but it helps you put yourself in the person's shoes, is sort of the idea about this. One thing that software developers do a lot is sometimes talk about the user as though there is one person or one group of people out there that are their users, right? Your users represent a whole range of people with different skills, different goals, and so on. And a good software, whether it be a website or other kind of software, is one that meets those goals. So for your purpose, your 3 personas, give them a name, give them a picture, use your friends, use famous people, it doesn't matter. Pick funny pictures from the web, I don't really care. Wait a minute, is it too late to take that one back? Oh, never mind. If you do use a picture from somewhere, give credit where you got it from, all right? But write a brief paragraph about them, and then identify 3 of their goals, specific to visiting your site. All right? So let's do a quick persona for LCC's website. So I'm going to open up Word. Oh, Word's already open. I'm going to open up a new file. And Just going to Google people. There we go. So we're going to go insert that picture in, and all right. So my persona is going to be Kanye. All right. And who is Kanye? He is a struggling musician who wants to go to community college to learn more about musical history. Also interested in poetry classes. Now again, I'm being a little silly about this and I'm writing that, but the idea here is this persona would represent someone who's already working, who is coming back to class, who's coming back to classes to enrich their career. So we could even say that in a persona. He already has a job he likes, but understands the need for continual education. You know, he believes in the importance of lifelong learning. As an adult learner, he has different goals than traditional students, as he has to keep up with job and family responsibilities. So, what would we say maybe good goals for this kind of person would be? What would be the goals of an adult learner, let's say, coming to school, as opposed to a high school student? What are some of the goals? Pardon me? Okay. That's good. Let me rephrase that just a little bit. All right. The thing to keep in mind is an adult learner may or may not be focused in a degree program. Some adult learners, especially people that are already in a career, aren't necessarily interested in getting a degree in the field. I have a lot of people in some of my programming classes, for example, that are already working as software developers, but they need to learn a particular skill. All right, so they're not coming back to get a degree. They probably already have a degree. So I'm going to put as one of his goals, as part of his continuing education, being able to continue his education by finding relevant classes as opposed to degree programs. So that might be one way to put that. He's interested in continuing education, which means he's not necessarily interested in getting a degree, he just wants the knowledge. All right? Now, we could have a different kind of adult learner as a persona, someone that's switching careers, where they may be interested in getting a degree. All right? So you have two different people with two different sets of goals. All right? And they would represent two different personas. Remember, for a college or for any bigger institution, you're going to have a gigantic number of personas. We're only asking for 3 in this case. Another one of his goals might be to find classes that meet his work/family schedule. Some people that make, some people that you know work a full-time job, you know, are interested in evening classes. They're not necessarily interested in all the classes that are offered during the day. Another goal for this person might be to explore different delivery options for courses. In other words, find out, gee, can I take this course online? All right? I'm going to be on my world tour next year, and therefore I'm not going to be able to come to Elyria for classes every 2 times a week, but I will have internet wherever I'm at, and therefore I could take the course that way. So that might be an example of a persona. And so persona, one of the personas might look something like this. All right? We have a picture, we have given them a name, we've written a little paragraph about their situation, focusing on why they're relevant for our particular problem, what's different about them than our other personas, and then defining 3 goals. All right? You'll do this for 3 different personas. All right? And again, it may not be immediately clear, but it's pretty easy to think for almost any situation, any problem that you're trying to solve, of 3 different personas. Okay? So that's the persona section. I'll save this because I'm kind of proud of this, and I'll post this to Canvas. All right, so that takes us through here. The last thing is a prioritized list of 3 of your goals for the project. And by your goals, I don't want to see like to get an A in the class or to do a good job or something like that. I want to see imagining you're the organization creating the site. In other words, what is it that you want to communicate? Because remember, an organization creating a site can have all kinds of goals. I worked for a jewelry store. We did development on their website. Now, their goals, of course, one of their goals was to increase their sales. Now, so that would be stated. Their goal is to increase sales. The more precise that you can be, the better off you're going to be. For example, you might be able to state to increase sales by a certain percentage or something like that. Maybe develop markets, gain awareness of people that don't normally shop at your place, get people interested in it, and so on. So we mentioned some of the goals that Lorraine Community College might have for this, to be able to service students more effectively, all right? To be able to recruit new students. Those would be 2 examples of goals. So your users have goals, and the organization making the site has goals. A site is going to be successful if it can satisfy both the goals of the organization and the goals of the user. All right? A site might address the goals of the organization, but if it doesn't address the goals of the user, then people aren't going to bother using it. Like, what's in it for me? Why are people going to go visit that site? On the other hand, a site might address the needs of the organization, or I'm sorry, of the users, but if it doesn't do anything for the organization, then it's really not worthwhile either. An effective site is going to address both the goals of the user and the goals of the organization. So that's the first section. What do we have? We have a paragraph describing the site. we have 3 user personas, something like this, where we have a description of the persona, and we have 3 goals for them. And then finally, we have goals of the maker of the site, what your goals are, putting yourself in their shoes. Yes? Yeah, the first 4 sections of the site, of the design, strategy, scope, structure, and wireframe, are done in Word. Correct. It should look professional. It should be done in Word and read like a report one would give your boss. All right? So, turn it in. It should look good. It shouldn't just be, it should be clear what each section is. Use spell check, and so on. The scope. The scope describes what the project will do in precise terms as possible. In other words, I've defined some goals. How are we going to meet those goals? What are we going to put on the site to satisfy those goals? If you look at Kanye here, Kanye wants to be able to finding relevant classes instead of programs. Find classes that meet his work or family schedule. Explore different delivery options. So one thing that might help Kanye is to have a page that describes a different way you can take classes at Lorraine County Community College. There's several. Some classes are offered in North Ridgeville. Some classes are offered in Wellington. Some are offered in Lorraine. Some are offered on their main campus. You used to be able to take TV classes. I assume they still do that, all right, where the lectures are shown on the public access channel on cable. I think they still do that for some classes, all right. And finally, there's on campus. Well, I talked about that. And finally, there's online. Then there's classes that are called blended, where you do some in person and some online. So, especially an adult that may have been out of school for a while, all right, might not be familiar with all the options of how you can take a class. So, one way to address their goals would be to have a page that shows the different ways that you can take classes at the college. So, if I was making the requirements, and I'll start out making the requirements, one of the things might be to have a page. The site will contain a page describing the different delivery methods for courses. And that addresses Kanye's first goal. All right? I would suggest even doing that, actually typing next to the goal or next to the requirement what goal it addresses. Because a couple of things. When you are done, you better have addressed one way or another all the goals that you've defined. Right? If you've defined all the things that are going to be on your site and you've not addressed one of the goals, then you missed something. You need to go back and revise it. The opposite is also true. If you have a goal that doesn't address, if you have a requirement that doesn't address one of the goals, then why bother having it on your site? A page that shows CISS professors' hobbies. Well, I don't know if that would work towards any of the goals. So why put it on your site? All right? Remember, anything additional that you have on your site that doesn't relate to one of the goals is really just a distraction. Because the more that you have on the site, the more difficult it's going to be for people to find stuff on your site. And therefore, you want to keep things to the essence. You want to keep only showing stuff that's essential. What do we mean by essential? I mean it relates to one of the goals. All right? Now, I picked 3 as the number of goals just to give you an idea. I just don't want you to define one goal for a persona and one goal for the organization. I want you to define multiple goals. In a real project, you could have a whole list of goals. You could have a dozen goals for a persona or for the organization. But for this site, I have 3. And so your requirements will match up with your goals. All right? If we look at Kanye's second goal, find classes that meet his work and family schedule, be able to search for courses by day, time, campus, delivery method. All right? So if a user knows that they work day shift, they might want to search for only classes that meet in the evening, or vice versa. If a person knows that they have their kids' PTA meeting at Wednesdays, and therefore they can't make class on Wednesdays, they might do a search for classes that are not on Wednesday, that are on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. If a student wants weekend classes, they might be able to search that way. If a student wants to avoid weekend classes, they might want to search that way. All right? So this particular thing would address Kanye's second goal, and so on. So when you are done, again, you're going to have a list of these. How many of them? I don't know. But I would guess 12 to 16, 16 to 20. All right? Every goal that a person has should be addressed by at least one requirement, but one goal might be addressed by several requirements. And a given requirement might address several goals too. So you have a total of 12 goals. So I would guess 12 to 16 requirements might be sufficient to cover all your goals. You know when you're done when you have all your goals covered and you have no requirements that do not relate to any of your goals. Okay? So that's how you know when you're done. All right? When you've completely addressed as great a degree as possible all the requirements, and you don't have any requirements that don't associate with, don't relate to a goal. There's a difference between requirements and goals. One is what you or the people visiting your site want to achieve. The other is what content you're going to put on the site to help achieve that. All right? I'm going to state some things, and you tell me if it's a goal or requirement. A site is going to have, let's get back to me doing a jewelry site. If I were to say that my site is going to have coupons on the site for discounts on jewelry items, would you say that was a goal or a requirement? That'd be a requirement, right? That is going to be how I'm going to try to achieve something, all right? What would the goal relate to that? I don't know, maybe like increase customer traffic to the store, sell more items in a period of time, and so on. What about for a college? If I said, to recruit more students to attend our college. Is that a goal or a requirement? That's a goal, right? I didn't say anything about how I'm going to try to do that. All right? The what is a goal, what it is you want to achieve. The how you plan on trying to achieve that is a requirement. All right? And again, they ought to match up, right? They ought to match up. You shouldn't have any requirements that don't have goals associated with them. I mean, yeah. In other words, that would be a waste of time to put that content on the site if it doesn't relate to any of the goals. Likewise, you shouldn't have any goals that don't have requirements. If you define something as important, then why aren't you doing something about it? So that's the second part. You're going to have a list of well, I said 15 to 20 here. So in that range. I have some words here. Please read them. I didn't just type them out just to kill time. All right? And, you know, I think I said what I wanted to say effectively here. I think my job here is just to point out the important things. Don't bite off more than you can chew. Don't have a list of 200 requirements. All right? That's great, but you don't need to do that for this project. All right? I'm sure you have other responsibilities, so you don't have to make a site that's that big. Likewise, just as I said with goals, having basic web design principles aren't really requirements. So don't say it's a requirement that your site has good navigation. It's a requirement that your site is accessible. All those things are assumed, all right? So you don't have to say it. The goals and the requirements relate specifically to the content of the site, not what makes for good web design. Now, as your project goes on, you may add and change some requirements. That's okay, all right? A design is a plan. It's a roadmap of how to get to a certain point. All right? Therefore, you know, just as in real life, if you have a roadmap to get from here to Columbus, if you encounter some problems on the way, like there's construction on 71 or something, you might go a different direction and take a different route. All right? That's okay. Throughout the process, you discover things. You realize something that was missing, or the organization changes its mind about something and wants to do something a little bit differently than the way they wanted to do it before. That's okay. That's part of the process. Structure. That's the third part. So the 3 S's that we have so far. We have strategy, which are goals and personas. Scope, which are the requirements. Structure is how the pages are going to be organized. In other words, what pages we're going to have and how they're going to be structured. So in the scope section, we'll come up with a list of requirements. Well, what are we going to do? Are we going to put all those requirements on one page? No, probably not, right? Are we going to take and make a separate page for every requirement? No, that's probably not true either. All right, we're going to take those requirements and group them and come up with some logical pages, all right, to talk about the requirements of the site. All right? And we're going to say how those pages are going to be laid out, how they're going to be structured. Now, any topic that you pick can be structured a million different ways, right? Your job in the structure section is to figure out the best way to organize the material for this topic. So let's pick a different example. I think this is a good example of how we could organize content on a page. All right? And we'll pick an example of a sporting goods store. What is one way that we could organize the pages on the site? Okay. All right. We could organize the content by sport. So the structure chart, which is what you're going to produce here, in this case might look like this. Here's our home page. Here is our basketball page. Our softball page. Our fishing page. And so on down the line. All right? Even that we could organize a couple different ways. We could organize team sport, individual sport, outdoor activities, and then maybe having that. I'm not saying what the best way is. I'm just saying what some of the alternatives are. Because you might look at this and say, well, I don't really like that. That's okay. We're just thinking of options. Our job is to pick the best option. All right? What would be a different way other than by sport? A different way to organize material for a sporting goods store. By season. We have our spring, summer, fall, and winter sports. All right? Might be a good way, right? For example, now, there's probably not a lot of need in sporting goods store for baseball attire, right? Because that's not really a fall sport. Baseball is played mainly in the spring and summer. All right. Also, winter's coming up, so the winter sports, hockey and ice skating, and might be starting to come into. People might be starting to think about that. Maybe their kids' hockey is going to start in a couple weeks or something like that. So that is, again, is it the best way to organize it? No, but it's a reasonable way. Not necessarily. I won't say no. Not necessarily, but it is a reasonable way to organize the material on a sporting goods site. What would be a third way that's not by sport or by season? Indoor versus outdoor. Sure. What would be another? Well, I'll just come up with a couple. Maybe by apparel. I don't know how to spell apparel. A-P-P-A-R-E-L. Versus equipment. Maybe by gender. Or maybe each of these would be set aside by gender. Or maybe you have an adults versus children section. All right? So, by, or youth or whatever, probably better to say than children. Maybe you have it divided that way. Here's the idea. How are you going to, we've come up with, we spent 4 minutes on this, and we came up with 5 or 6 different ways to organize our material. How are we going to decide what the best way is? How are we going to decide what the best way to organize our material is? Exactly. We're going to try to think of it from the perspective of our personas. All right? How do these people, the people that we define, how are they more likely to look at the situation? All right? What would make sense to them? Not what makes sense to us. We work at the sporting goods store, right? Or we're working for the sporting goods store. So we know how the store is organized, maybe, and how we organize the store in our minds. But that's not important. It's important how the customers are going to view that store. So we come up, we take our best shot and pick the organization that we think would make most sense to our customers. So for this section, what you're going to produce is you're going to produce a chart like this, let's say. And then you're going to write a paragraph talking about why you picked that over some of the other alternatives. So you'll say what some of the alternatives are, and you'll say, well, I picked this because, and then you'll justify it. Yes? You can just be sure that you export it as a PDF or a JPEG. So you can use any tool that you want to design it. But again, make sure it comes to me as in a standard format, like a PDF or a JPEG. I don't want to have to install software on any computer to grade this. All right? So if I'm at the library grading this on one of their computers, I don't want to have to download and install anything. All right. There's a couple more steps. We'll pick up on that. And then we'll start talking about how we can take our design and start actually making the website. I'll see you up in lab.